I think the first level is a happiness that it's not ranking any of us individually, it's ranking all four of us together, because truly Apollo is a product of our teamwork.
I think the most special thing is that the recognition of healthcare and the impact that it has for the rest of India. The recognition of Apollo and four of us being a part of Apollo and carrying out Chairman's vision of bringing quality healthcare to India is really something that I appreciate.
Power really means an opportunity to impact people's lives. And we're able to do that in a positive way with healthcare, and I'm grateful to that. The fact that we can bring together so many beautiful minds to be able to deliver seamlessly on the promise of what healthcare is, again, is what makes us happy and makes power important. You just have to use it well and use it wisely.
If the power is not derived from us, the power is derived from our team, from our doctors, from the faith that our patients have in us. So power is not directly from us. Power is imbibed through the surrounding that we have and the organization that we've helped to build.
It's the fact that, we managed to have the trust of so many people. Power is also the impact that we are able to make, the social impact, whether it's through improving people's lives or creating jobs. These are, or the ability to actually draw people from 124 countries. This is really meaningful power.
I think the biggest turning point was actually leaving the group for a while when I was much younger, in my 30s, and I pursued with my husband because that was something that we made a deal before we got married. And then I realized that realizing your true passion lies in this purpose that we had built. So coming back to Apollo was, I think, a turning point that I felt I had learned a lot from the outside, but there's so much more that I could deliver. So whether it was this, and then more recently, I think that COVID was a huge turning point for us, as it must be for many people. But in Apollo, it was the ability for us to realize something that we had been planning for ages, but I think didn't have that much of a all-in, and that was to turn Apollo digital. And I think now that's happened. I would think that this is the second coming of the new Apollo. And again, like we did before when we started the first Apollo, we are light years ahead of anybody else.
For me, it's been like 3 decades of turning points. When I was 19 and thought of the Apollo name, I never thought the chairman would even consider, listening to us. But he gave us the courage to actually enter the business and live out our dreams. When I was 29, I worked with the team to raise the first FDI into healthcare. And really, I think it was the belief that he had in us and the fact that we could make a change. That was a turning point. And again, in 2018-19, we went through a very difficult period. When we launched Tier 2, we bunched up our investments. We did Proton, all our investments, and our share price really dipped because we were taking on this burden. But that's when I realized, like Shobhu said, that even in a crisis, there's an opportunity. And we continue to grow the Apollo footprint.
The point for me, I think, was when Dad didn't let me join medical school. Because then I would have been a doctor, but now, I'm working on the other side of helping doctors. So that was like a foundational turning point. And I think the other one was really way back in 90, when I got entrusted with the technology and the digital at Apollo. So, and those days it wasn't digital, it was a very routine IT business, but putting in computers, working on telemedicine, and continuing to look at whether it was, the BPO company that we started. So various things across the technology. And so it just gets more exciting every day, all the things that we can do with information technology and the future with AI, all those, the foundations were laid because I just happened to step into that department.
One of our doctors who's like superbly successful the other day and quite young said, I started off as an undergrad in your institution, and now he's like one of our most key players and does some amazing work on a day-to-day basis. And that kind of keeps us thinking that we're actually responsible for so many people's lives and their careers, whether they're doctors or whether there are nursing staff or even the housekeeping staff. And I think that is what makes us a very responsible organization, that we can't afford to take anything which we do lightly. And so it might be a turning point, but it's more an evolution of a thought process and very important to the DNA of Apollo. Always feel that sometimes it's really convincing the governments or investors, because we know that we're doing the right thing, but sometimes the views of people we deal with may not necessarily be in tandem with what we want to do in terms of an agenda. So for that, I think it is a challenge, and I see that Suneeta faces a lot with all these powers outside, and those are probably one of the toughest phases as professionals. The other aspect is really keeping the flocks together with continuing competition, with the fact that clinicians want to be entrepreneurs. Really keeping them together as a whole healthcare ecosystem again is tough, and we're probably going through that now. And as we grow to becoming, the next version of Apollo, with the digital work which Shobana and Sangita have taken on and who are doing extremely well, I think that the transition is probably a tough phase, but we are poised and confident that we can come through that well.
I do believe that each one of these, actually, for us, I think the tougher the phase for Apollo is where we've come out the strongest. And to quote that, I remember in 2004 when MedPlus opened 50 stores in a day, and we were just and we were 200 stores. We said, this is game on for us. So we went on and really opened 1,000 stores in 1,000 days, and then never looked back. So the ability of, when competition comes, that's what wakes us up. So I do think that every one of these tough phases, whether it came from competition, but the real one that is significant for me, and I think I would echo my sisters, is that in our lives, we learned to be builders. We did not learn how to, on one side, sell, or on the other side, destroy. And that's something that I actually learned, that we all learned together during this period of the last 3 years. So the first thing we did was that we took a decision, like Suneeta said, we were going through this tough phase. We needed the capital, all that. And we had built a super successful insurance business. And we actually, learned with the pain of parting and selling that. I mean, those were our people. All the 3,000 people I had in that was super painful. And I think, but learning that, and we did what was in the interest of Apollo as a bigger story, because it made Apollo stronger. I do think it contributed in some way to the strengthening of our share price and how we went on. But it was a learning of how in life, in business, you also need to know how to let go. And I do think that we landed it in good hands, and all my people are doing very well. And I think that the fundamental thought process within Apollo was that, for us to be digital, we had to let go of some of the mindset of this thing. So, to destroy some parts in not just thinking, but even processes, to be able to take it further. And I think that to us was possibly the toughest things we learned as professionals. I think more recent was really the entire COVID period. At a time when people said they found time to reconnect with family, to read the books they never read, we were working literally 24/7. So it was the pace, it was the worry of what will happen to our nurses, how do we manage these patients. It was the uncertainty and learning how to deal with this uncertainty and then evolve and then to share the answers. So everything we did was multiplied 10x, 20x, 100x in terms of speed and pace. And I think at the same time, I was also handling, I was president FICCI. So just the challenges across the multiple, so I don't call it tough as much as new, important, significant, and definitely, foundational in terms of the way you think about many things. So it broke old paradigms, it helped us evolve. So it's a very memorable phase in my life.
Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the ability to create, the ability to maintain, destroy, and create again. I think those cycles are very important, and we have to learn to understand to really live with those cycles. On a very personal level, I think as a professional, it was very challenging. My first week at work, the CFO told me, "You are the chairman's daughter, and that's why you're sitting here." So I learned that knowledge is important. It's really, you really need to understand the business before you really start, before you get a title or a role.
I would have set my retiring date much earlier, because there's so much fun things happening. Like Sangita said, during COVID, there were people that learned new things. What talent did we have? I don't have a COVID talent except cycling, maybe. So in healthcare, one thing is that we were so much caught up in the moment, because every day you start the morning with one patient's journey and you can spend the whole day on that, and the whole week if this thing. So the ability to actually keep a little bit more of long-term in mind is I think a very important thing. I would tell myself if I could do it all again.
Maybe
besides
work-life balance.
Besides that, I was coming to that, more work-life balance, the ability to maybe exercise more, things like that you miss out on, because work is just so encompassing and so 24/7.
It needs to be integrated. There's no balance, because when we're working, we're just so much in the space. And then the family, something happens, which is a crisis, and then we rush there. So yes, how do you integrate family and work?
Spend more time on looking at the external environment, learning more. While we have done, there's so much more which is possible, and the world is moving so fast. So I think learning from the ecosystem around us is so much more important. And the other thing is that working together with the teams.
I read everything that comes before a board meeting, and then I listen, and I find that's assertion enough.
Is ensuring that work gets done, and when the board members have some time to voice their opinion, it makes it a more useful and a more interactive board. So this necessity to really over assert, which we see in some boards, it is not a requirement in ours at this point.
Quite simple with data. I think learned late in life, but de-risk. Always have one primary source of income, but have a de-risk portfolio. And even if you think of Apollo, it's pharmacy, retail, hospitals, it's clinics, it's digital.
I cycle 500 kilometers a week, a month. So, that's something I've done lately. But yeah, so I love to exercise. So for me, it's music and charities.
I try not to get wound up, so I don't have to unwind very fast. But when I do, it's Netflix and Avengers, or Disney Hotstar and Avengers.
It's anything which is a bit creative. That kind of makes me happy and makes me want to do more things. It can be a building, it can be cooking, it can be a painting, anything like that, but something creative.